Mork and Mindy ran 4 seasons, and 8 of the cast in this story are gone. One took his own life inside a disease nobody had diagnosed. Another died of throat cancer with his family around the bed. A third died of organ failure 6 months after burying his wife. Number 1. He sat on his head when the producer asked him to take a seat, and Garry Marshall hired him there and then. Robin Williams was 27, a Juilliard dropout working comedy clubs, and 5 months later he was on the cover of Time magazine. Born in Chicago in 1951, he was the only child of a Ford executive and a former model from Mississippi. A quiet boy, bullied for his weight, he was raised largely by the family maid while both parents worked. In 1973, he won a full scholarship to Juilliard. 20 students were accepted that year. John Houseman took 2 of them into the advanced program, and the other was Christopher Reeve. 3 years on, Houseman told him the school had nothing left to teach him. The scripts for this show were written short on purpose. There is a stage direction on those pages that says, simply, that Robin will do something here. What the audience never saw was the correction underneath it. His real improvisations were frequently unusable on network television, so staff writers wrote fake ad-libs for him to perform instead. The freest performance in America was manufactured, line by line. In its first season, the show finished 3rd in the country. Then the network moved it off Thursdays, where it was beating The Waltons, onto Sundays against Archie Bunker's Place. Ratings fell to 27th and never recovered. He would win an Academy Award for Good Will Hunting, 6 Golden Globes, 5 Grammy Awards. There were 3 marriages. Valerie Velarde met while he was tending bar in San Francisco, and their son Zachary. Marcia Garces, 6 months pregnant on their wedding day with a daughter they called Zelda, now an actress and director, and then a son, Cody. Susan Schneider, in 2011. Something began in October of 2013. Fear first, then anxiety, an insomnia that would not break, memory loss, paranoia, delusions. Doctors called it early-stage Parkinson's disease. His wife later wrote in the medical journal Neurology that he kept repeating one sentence to her. He just wanted to reboot his brain. On the 11th of August, 2014, he died at his home in Paradise Cay, California, at 63. The coroner recorded suicide. An autopsy found what every doctor had missed: diffuse Lewy bodies scattered through his brain, a pathology specialists later called among the worst they had seen. He was cremated in San Anselmo, and 10 days later his ashes went into San Francisco Bay. Mork was a creature no rule on earth could contain. Robin Williams spent his final year losing the exact thing that made him Robin Williams, and nobody could tell him why. Second on the list is the woman who had to stand still while all of that happened around her. Pam Dawber never auditioned for Mindy McConnell. She had tested for a different series, lost that part to Lisa Hartman, and the network parked her in a paid talent development program until something turned up. Garry Marshall reached in and handed her a title role in the biggest new show on television. Detroit-born in 1951, she was the elder daughter of a commercial artist. Before acting, there was modeling in New York, and before that, commercials for Photomat, Noxzema, and a hair remover called Neat. Playing Mindy was harder than it looked. Her job was to react honestly to a man who might do anything in the next 4 seconds, and to make an audience believe she was falling in love with him. She never once looked like she was waiting for a cue. March of 1986 brought a telephone call. A mutual friend wanted to arrange a group evening, and Mark Harmon decided to ring her directly instead. He got her answering machine. Leaving a message while she stood in the room screening it, he suggested they skip the group and get a cup of coffee, and she picked up. 1 year to the day later, on the 21st of March, 1987, they married in a private ceremony, and they are married still. 39 years. Their 2 sons went into the business quietly. Sean, born in 1988, started as a stunt performer, played the younger version of his own father's television character, and now works in production. Ty Christian, born in 1992, writes screenplays, and one of his scripts was directed by his older brother. There is one more thing, and it explains why she stepped back. In July of 1989, a year after her sitcom My Sister Sam was canceled, Her 21-year-old co-star Rebecca Schaefer was shot dead outside her Los Angeles apartment by a man who had stalked her for 3 years. Dawber was devastated. She and the surviving cast filmed a public service announcement about gun violence, and the work she took afterwards was quieter, and there was less of it. 74 now, she surfaced again in 2021, playing an investigative journalist opposite her husband for 7 episodes. Mindy McConnell kept the strangest man in America tethered to the ground. Pam Dawber walked away from the noise and built a marriage that has outlasted nearly everyone else in this story. Third, and this one, was Robin Williams choosing his own hero. Jonathan Winters was 56 when he was hatched out of an egg on national television, dressed as a baby, calling Robin Williams his father and Pam Dawber his mother. It should have been unwatchable. Instead, 2 of the fastest improvisers who ever lived stood 4 feet apart and tried to demolish one another. And for 20 minutes a week, the series had a pulse again. He quit Springfield High School in his senior year and joined the United States Marine Corps at 17. 2.5 years in the Pacific Theater in the Second World War followed, and he came home a corporal. A disc jockey job came next, then a 15-minute routine on the first color television broadcast in 1957, sponsored by an antacid. What America knew him for was Maude Frickert, the sweet old lady with the barbed tongue, and for the fact that Johnny Carson often had no idea what was about to walk onto his stage. Winters arrived in character, and Carson had to interview a stranger. Live? He married Eileen Schauter in 1948 and stayed married 61 years until she died in January of 2009. They had 2 children, Jay and Lucinda, and 5 grandchildren, all 7 named in his obituary. The awards came late and heavy. 2 Grammy Awards out of 11 nominations. A Primetime Emmy in 1991 for Davis Rules. The Mark Twain Prize for American Humor in 1999, only the second person ever handed it. In 2008, Robin Williams presented him with a television award for the comedians who came first, a student handing a prize to his teacher. He died of natural causes on the evening of the 11th of April, 2013, at home in Montecito, California, at 87, 4 years after losing Eileen. Cremation followed, and his ashes were given to his family. 9 days earlier, he had finished recording a voice for a Smurfs film, and the studio dedicated the picture to him. Fans laid flowers on his Hollywood Walk of Fame star the next afternoon. Mirth was written to save a sinking show and could not do it. Jonathan Winters was the reason Robin Williams became Robin Williams, and that September, his student stood at the Emmys and said so aloud, 11 months before dying himself. Fourth is the one the network threw away. Conrad Janis played Fred McConnell, the disapproving father in the music shop, across 53 episodes, and after the first season, ABC simply removed him. Elizabeth Kerr went with him. The push was for younger viewers, the theme tune got a disco arrangement, and the explanation on screen was that Fred had gone off conducting an orchestra and taken Cora along. 2 other faces went in the same clear-out. Morgan Fairchild, who played Mindy's snooty school friend Susan, was never seen or mentioned again, and neither was Jeffrey Jackie, the boy who played Eugene, dropped because the producers wanted the show taken in another direction. Ratings collapsed from 3rd in America to 27th. For the 3rd season, the network reversed itself and brought Fred and Cora back, and the opening episode was titled, Without Embarrassment, Putting the Orc Back in Mork. He was fired from a hit and rehired by the people who fired him. Here is what none of that touched. Janis was born in Manhattan in 1928, son of Sidney Janis, the New York art dealer, and Harriet Grossman Janis, a writer. He auditioned successfully for a touring company at 13. A working jazz trombonist his entire adult life, he took his Beverly Hills unlisted jazz band onto The Tonight Show more than once. In the late 1980s, he and his brother Carol took over the Sidney Janis Gallery from their aging father and ran it through the 1990s. He married 3 times. Vicki Quarles, who gave him a son, Christopher, and a daughter, Karen. Rhonda Copland briefly. Then Maria Grimm in 1987, and that one held for 34 years until she died in September of 2021. 6 months was all he lasted without her. On the 1st of March, 2022, Conrad Janis died of organ failure at Cedars-Sinai Medical Center in Los Angeles. He was 94. Fred McConnell spent 4 years telling his daughter that the man in the attic did not belong there. Conrad Janis spent his real life running one of the most important modern art galleries in New York, and almost nobody watching had the faintest idea. Fifth, Tom Poston played Franklin Delano Bickley, the neighbor downstairs, the one who banged on the ceiling about the noise and wrote greeting card verses for a living. A man paid to put tenderness on paper who could not say a kind word out loud. Across 4 seasons, the writers let him thaw, until the Grouch was one of the few people in Boulder who loved these two. He joined the United States Army Air Forces in 1941, went through officer candidate school and flight training, and flew in the European theater. His aircraft dropped paratroopers over Normandy on the morning of the invasion. He served in North Africa, Italy, France, and England, and came out a captain. Then he walked into the American Academy of Dramatic Arts and learned to be funny. An Emmy came in 1959 for his work as one of Steve Allen's men in the street, alongside Don Knotts and Louis Nye. When Mel Brooks first took Get Smart to ABC, the network wanted Poston for the lead. ABC passed, another network picked it up, and Maxwell Smart went to Don Adams. He is said to have appeared in more situation comedies than any other American actor. His marriages read like a novel. Karen Lindgren divorced amicably. The actress Jean Sullivan, who gave him a daughter, Francesca. Then Kay Hudson, mother of his son Jason, and his daughter Hudson, whom he divorced in 1976, remarried in 1980, and cared for until she died of ALS at 54. 2 years later, he found Suzanne Plachette, a woman he had dated for a few months in 1959, and married her in 2001. On the 30th of April, 2007, Tom Poston died at home in Los Angeles at 85 of respiratory failure after a short illness. Plachette survived him by 9 months. He is buried beside her at Hillside Memorial Park Cemetery in Culver City, in her faith, though it was never his. Bickley was the man who hated everybody. Tom Poston flew over the Normandy drop zones at 22, then spent 50 years making people laugh. Sixth, and after all that, someone who is still here. Gina Hecht arrived in Season 2 as Jeannie Da Vinci, the sister who ran the deli, and she was the one character who could simply talk to Mork without needing him explained. The deli gave the show somewhere to be. She was 25, Houston-born. In 1953, she is the daughter of a stage actress and a stockbroker. She decided at 10, watching her mother from a theater seat, that this was the job. Training came at the North Carolina School of the Arts, and her first break was a sitcom that premiered weeks after Mork and Mindy did. The Season 3 cast list around her is worth a second. Foster Brooks, the roast comedian famous for playing a charming drunk, turned up as Mindy's overbearing boss at the television station. A 9-year-old Corey Feldman played a child at the daycare center where Mork worked years before The Goonies. Neither stayed long because nothing on this show stayed long. Her character was written out in the 4th season overhaul, the same purge that removed the Da Vinci restaurant entirely. She kept working anyway. Night Shift in 1982. An episode of Star Trek. A mother on Glee. 4 years on General Hospital as Judge Rachel Lasser, ending in 2019. She married the writer Brian Herskowitz in 1988, and they are still together, 38 years on, in the Los Angeles area. Her age today is 72. Jeannie Da Vinci was written as background warmth for other people's stories. Gina Hecht is one of only 2 people here, out of 10, still alive to be asked about it. 7th. He was the loudest voice on the lot, and he had a son he had never met. Jay Thomas came to Boulder in Season 2 as Remo Da Vinci, a New Yorker with a deli and a volume problem, the only thing on that set that sounded like real street noise. Born John Thomas Terrell in Kermit, Texas, in 1948, raised Catholic in New Orleans, he quarterbacked at Jesuit High School and at Jacksonville University. Before the acting, he was already famous, a top 40 radio voice in New York, and later the top-rated morning man in Los Angeles until 1993. Long before any of that, as a very young man, he had a son and gave him up for adoption. The boy was raised in Grosse Pointe, Michigan, by Larry and Kendra Harding, and grew up to be a musician. Living broke in Los Angeles, He could see a billboard from his window advertising the biggest morning radio host in the city, a man called J. Thomas, and he had no idea he was looking at his own father. They met more than 20 years after the adoption and stayed close for the rest of Thomas's life. That son is J.T. Harding, and he writes hit songs in Nashville now, including Smile for Uncle Kracker and number ones for Keith Urban and Blake Shelton. He married Sally Michelson in 1987, and they had two more sons, Samuel and Jacob. 2 Emmy Awards came his way for Murphy Brown. Throat surgery in 2013 kept him off David Letterman's Christmas show for the only time ever. On the 24th of August, 2017, J. Thomas died of throat cancer in Santa Barbara, California, at 69, with his family around him. Remo da Vinci was a man who fed people. J. Thomas gave away a son at the start of his life and spent the last stretch of it getting him back. If somebody in your family found each other late, tell me in the comments. That reunion is the part people will still be thinking about tomorrow. 8th, and this one happened 3 days ago. Shelley Fabares joined in Season 2 as Kathy McConnell, the much younger second wife of Mindy's father, a thankless part in any sitcom, and she made Fred human just by standing next to him. She had been on American television since she was 10, and it showed. Santa Monica born, in 1944, niece of the actress Nanette Fabre, she was a Donna Reed show daughter to an entire country. In 1962, she released a record called Johnny Angel, and it went to #1 in America. She was Elvis Presley's leading lady 3 times, then the second act. Christine Armstrong on Coach, all 199 episodes, and 2 Emmy nominations for it. In October of 2000, she was diagnosed with autoimmune hepatitis and received a liver transplant. She spent years afterwards campaigning for organ donation, telling anyone who would listen what a stranger's signature on a card had bought her. It bought her 26 more years. She married the record producer Lou Adler in 1964. In 1984, she married the actor Mike Farrell, and that marriage lasted 42 years. On the 22nd of August, 2026, Shelley Fabares died in Los Angeles after a short illness at 82. Her family said she was surrounded by the people who loved her. The cause has not been released. Kathy McConnell was a stepmother nobody asked for. Shelley Fabares had been famous for 20 years before she took the job, and she outlived almost every name on this call sheet. If you are still here, subscribe. 2 more people are coming, and one worked opposite the voice you heard at the end of every episode. 9th. Nobody remembers his name and everybody remembers the robe. Robert Donner played Exidor, the self-appointed prophet who arrived with an invisible congregation behind him, and that wailing cry of "Mork, is that you?" He was the only character who knew exactly what Mork was, and not one person believed him. Born in New York City in 1931, raised across New Jersey, Michigan, and Texas, he served 4 years in the United States Navy and settled in California afterwards. While living in Studio City, he became friends with a young man named Clint Eastwood, and it was Eastwood who told him to try acting. He took the advice. His first job was an uncredited part in Rio Bravo in 1959, and John Wayne Westerns kept him fed for years. Cool Hand Luke. Yancey Tucker on The Waltons. Then Eastwood, by now a director, cast him in High Plains Drifter as a barnstorming preacher, which is Exidor played dead straight, and the best thing he ever did on film. Every week he worked opposite the voice of Orson. That voice belonged to Ralph James, never once seen on screen. Also the turtle in the Tootsie Pop commercials. Dead in 1992 at 67. Donner married the television producer Jill Sherman in 1982 and stayed with her 24 years. On the 8th of June, 2006, he had a heart attack at his home in Sherman Oaks and died at 75. His obituary named a wife and 2 brothers. Exidor was a prophet nobody listened to. Robert Donner was talked into the entire career by a neighbor, and the neighbor turned out to be Clint Eastwood, 10th and last. Grandma Cora was 66 and the coolest person in the room, and while Fred disapproved of everything, Cora put the record on. Elizabeth Kerr played her across 32 episodes, and she was the grandmother a generation of children wished they had. Kansas City born, in 1912, she studied at Northwestern University and the University of Kansas. She was cast at the Pasadena Playhouse off her first audition and turned professional in 2 years. Broadway took her in 1951 with Angel in the Pawn Shop, and she went back for Redhead and the Conquering Hero. Here is the part almost nobody knows. She founded the Glendale Civic Theater in 1947 and launched the Resident Theater in North Hollywood in 1952, and she directed there. Before television came looking for her at 66, she had spent 30 years building rooms for other actors to work in. Of her private life, there is nothing on the public record. No marriage, no children, no interviews. She kept it entirely to herself, which is a real answer and a rare one. Death came on the 13th of January 2000 at 87, and even the cause was never made public. Cora was the one who said yes to the alien on the first day. Elizabeth Kerr had already spent half a century saying yes to people nobody else would hire. 8 of them are gone. The house on Pine Street in Boulder they used for the outside shots is still standing, and people still knock on the door.